Army, are you ready? Welcome to K-pop chemistry. Before the Japan tour even began, something unexpected was caught on camera. Jungkook and Taehyung were seen together, but not where they were supposed to be. No staff around, no clear schedule, just the two of them moving quietly like they didn't want to be noticed at first. It seemed like a normal moment until fans started noticing the details. The way they looked around, the direction they chose, the timing that didn't match anything official, and then something else appeared in the background, something no one noticed at first. So, what really happened in that moment? And why does it feel like they weren't alone? The moment that background detail was noticed, everything about that clip started to feel different because it wasn't just a shadow. At first, it was barely there, blending into the dim lighting, easy to overlook. But once fans zoomed in, slowed it down, and replayed it frame by frame, the movement became undeniable. Someone was there, not passing by but standing still watching. The footage restarted from the beginning. Jungkook and Taehyung entered the frame together, walking side by side. Their pace wasn't rushed, but it wasn't casual either. There was something controlled about it, like they were aware of their surroundings in a way that didn't match a simple walk. Then Jungkook glanced to the side, quick, subtle, but not random. Taehyung noticed it too. His eyes followed the same direction, but he didn't turn his head fully, just enough to register something without making it obvious. And that's when the presence became clearer, positioned just beyond the light, partially hidden behind a structure. Someone stood there already facing them, waiting. The distance between them closed slowly, not because anyone was rushing but because none of them moved away. Jungkook didn't stop. Taehyung didn't hesitate. They kept walking straight toward that spot like it had already been decided. And that detail changed everything because it meant they weren't discovering the presence in that moment. They already knew. A few steps closer and the figure shifted slightly. Not stepping forward, not stepping back, just adjusting, acknowledging. Jungkook slowed down, not enough to stop, but enough to match the pace of something unseen. Taehyung moved half a step closer to him. Not obvious but intentional. Their shoulders nearly aligned. And in that silent adjustment there was something unspoken, something shared, the kind of understanding that doesn't need words. Then the figure spoke. The audio wasn't clear, but the reaction was direct. Jungkook's posture changed first, his shoulders tightening slightly, his gaze focusing more directly. Taehyung didn't look surprised. He didn't react outwardly at all. He just watched carefully like he was listening for something specific. The exchange was short, too short for something that felt this heavy. A few words, a pause, then Jungkook responded. Whatever he said shifted the moment because the figure went still, completely still, as if recalculating, as if whatever answer they expected wasn't the one they got. Taehyung finally moved one step forward, not toward the figure, but closer to Jungkook, closing the space completely. And that single movement did something unexpected. The figure stepped back just slightly, but enough to break the tension that had been building. Jungkook didn't follow. He didn't push forward. He stayed where he was. But this time he wasn't alone in that stance. Taehyung was right there beside him, not behind, not separate, beside. The figure said something again, longer this time, more deliberate. But whatever it was, it didn't change their position. Jungkook didn't move. Taehyung didn't step away. And that silence between their responses started to feel louder than any words. Then suddenly a noise from the distance, faint at first but getting closer, voices, movement, something that didn't belong in that moment. All three of them reacted. Jungkook turned his head slightly. Taehyung's gaze flickered for a split second. The figure looked past them toward the source of the sound. Time was running out. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to be seen, not like this. The figure made a final move, leaning in just enough to say something quickly, something urgent, something only Jungkook could hear clearly. Jungkook's expression changed instantly. Not shock, not confusion, but something deeper. Something that stayed even after the figure pulled back. Taehyung noticed. He didn't ask. He didn't interrupt. But his eyes stayed on Jungkook, waiting for a reaction, for an answer. The figure stepped back again, then turned, walking away without hesitation, disappearing into the same shadows they had been standing in before. Gone. Just like that, the voices in the distance got louder, closer. Jungkook didn't move right away. He stood there for a second, processing whatever had just been said. Taehyung didn't leave, didn't step away. He stayed exactly where he was, waiting. Then Jungkook turned to him. Their eyes met. And in that moment everything else faded, no background, no noise, no figure. Just them and whatever had just passed between them. Taehyung searched his expression. Jungkook didn't speak, but he didn't look away either. And somehow that was enough because Taehyung nodded once, slow, understanding something that hadn't been said out loud. Jungkook exhaled, then took a step forward. Not toward where the figure had gone, but in a completely different direction. Taehyung followed immediately. No hesitation. No questions. As if whatever decision had just been made, it was theirs now, together. And just as they disappeared from the frame, one last detail flickered into view. In the far background, barely visible, the figure hadn't left. They had stopped, turned back, and were still watching. Which left one final question hanging in the air. If they were still there at the end, then why did it feel like this moment wasn't over yet? The moment people realized the figure hadn't actually left, the entire scene changed again because now it wasn't just a meeting. It was being watched even after it ended. The footage was replayed, zoomed into the far background where the figure had paused. The quality dropped the more it was enlarged, but one thing remained clear. They had turned back, not walking away, not disappearing but standing still, watching Jungkook and Taehyung as they moved in the opposite direction. And that detail felt intentional, like whatever had just happened wasn't finished yet. A new angle surfaced not long after, short, almost accidental. It didn't capture the main moment, but it captured what came right after. A narrow corridor, dim lighting, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for somewhere hidden. And then Jungkook appeared, entering first, his pace slightly faster now. Not rushed but more decisive than before. Taehyung followed closely behind, closer than in any previous clip. No space between them and no distance left. The door behind them swung halfway shut, leaving a narrow opening just enough for the camera to catch a glimpse inside. They stopped, not in the center of the corridor, but off to the side like they were choosing a spot that wouldn't be easily seen. Jungkook turned first. This time there was no hesitation, no scanning the surroundings, no checking who might be watching. He faced Taehyung directly, and whatever he was about to say, it had been building for a while. Taehyung didn't wait. He spoke first, quick, quiet, but firm enough to stop Jungkook before he even started. Jungkook froze for a second. Then something shifted, not tension, not distance, but something closer to understanding. Like whatever Taehyung said matched something Jungkook had already been thinking. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with things that didn't need to be repeated. Jungkook took a step closer. Now there was no space at all. Not even enough for hesitation to exist between them. Taehyung didn't move back, didn't look away. He stayed right there, meeting him in that moment without holding anything back. Jungkook said something low, controlled but different from before. This wasn't about the figure anymore. This wasn't about what had just happened outside. This was about something else, something that had been there long before tonight. Taehyung listened, completely still. And then he nodded once, slow. But this time it wasn't just understanding, it was agreement. And that changed everything because Jungkook's expression softened just slightly, but enough to break whatever tension had been holding him back. For a second it felt like everything was about to settle, like whatever had been building between them was finally about to be said out loud. Then a sound, faint but close. Not from the hallway but from behind them. Both of them turned instantly toward the door. Still half open, still leaving that narrow gap to the outside. And in that gap, a shadow. Not fully visible, not stepping in, just there. Close enough to hear, close enough to interrupt. The same presence they had followed. Not openly, not directly, but enough to stay just outside the moment, watching, listening, waiting. Jungkook's posture changed immediately. The softness disappeared, replaced by something sharper, more guarded. Taehyung noticed too. But this time he didn't step back. He stepped forward, closer to the door, closer to that shadow. Jungkook reached out slightly like he was about to stop him but didn't. Taehyung stopped just short of the doorway. Not crossing it, not revealing anything but close enough to make it clear. He knew someone was there and he wasn't going to ignore it. The shadow didn't move, didn't step away, didn't reveal itself. Just stayed there silent, unmoving. The tension returned instantly, stronger than before. Because now it wasn't hidden. It was right there between them. Taehyung said something low, clear, directed at the presence outside. Not loud, but enough to carry through the narrow opening. A statement, not a question. The shadow shifted just slightly, the first movement since appearing. Jungkook watched closely, not stepping forward, not stepping back, waiting. The seconds stretched. Then the shadow moved away, slowly, deliberately, as if choosing to leave rather than being forced to. The space beyond the door went still again, empty but not completely, because the feeling of being watched didn't disappear. It lingered. Jungkook exhaled quietly. Taehyung stepped back. The moment between them returned, but it wasn't the same as before. Now it carried something new, something unresolved, something interrupted. Jungkook looked at him again. This time there was no hesitation, just a quiet certainty, like whatever decision had been forming had already been made. Taehyung held his gaze, waiting for him to say it, for him to finish what had been started. Jungkook opened his mouth, and the screen cut, no words, then no answer. Only one thought left behind. If the figure had been close enough to hear everything, then what exactly were they waiting to confirm before finally stepping away? The silence after that moment didn't feel like an ending. It felt like something had been confirmed. Not just for Jungkook and Taehyung, but for the one who had been watching. Because they didn't interrupt, they didn't step in, they waited, and then they left only after hearing enough. That detail changed everything again because it meant the figure wasn't trying to stop anything. They were trying to know something. And whatever they needed to hear, they got it. A new piece of footage surfaced hours later. Different location, different lighting, but the same night. A parking area. Quiet, almost empty. The kind of place no one pays attention to until something unusual happens. The camera was fixed, overlooking a row of parked vehicles. At first, nothing moved. Then Jungkook appeared walking alone. But this time his pace wasn't steady. It slowed, then picked up again, like his thoughts were pulling him in two different directions. He stopped near one of the cars, not getting in, not leaving, just standing there thinking. A few seconds passed. Then Taehyung entered the frame from the opposite side. No hesitation, no pause, he walked straight toward Jungkook like he already knew exactly where he would be. And that detail felt important because it meant they didn't need to search for each other anymore. They were already aligned. Jungkook looked up the moment Taehyung got close. Their eyes met instantly. No distance and no uncertainty. Just something quiet but certain. Taehyung said something first, soft, but clear enough in tone to carry weight. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He listened completely. Then he shook his head slightly. Not in disagreement but in disbelief, like whatever Taehyung had just said was something he already knew but still needed to hear out loud. Taehyung stepped closer, now standing directly in front of him. No space left, no room for avoidance. And this time Jungkook didn't look away. He held his gaze steady, unwavering. And then he spoke, longer than before, more open, more real. Not the controlled words from earlier. Something deeper. Something that had been building through every moment they hadn't been able to speak freely. Taehyung didn't interrupt, didn't react outwardly, but his expression changed just slightly. Enough to show that whatever Jungkook was saying, it mattered a lot. The air between them shifted again. Not tense, not heavy, but something else, something closer to clarity. Then, headlights, sudden, bright, cutting across the frame. Both of them turned instinctively. A car pulling in slowly, deliberately, too deliberate to be random. Jungkook's posture changed immediately. Taehyung noticed. He glanced at him, then back at the car. The engine didn't turn off. The lights stayed on, blinding, hiding whoever was inside. And for a moment no one moved.